The scorching Manila sun punished the busy streets as Manny Pacquiao drove his luxury car down the main avenue. Despite all the fame and fortune he had earned in boxing rings around the world, the 8-division champion never forgot his humble origins in the streets of General Santos City. His eyes, tired after a long training session, still maintained that characteristic vivacity, carefully observing the urban scenery that unfolded around him like a living painting of Filipino reality. At a busy intersection, while waiting for the red light, Manny noticed a small figure between the cars. A boy of approximately 10 years old, skinny and dressed in worn clothes, balanced a styrofoam cooler filled with water bottles as he maneuvered between vehicles under the merciless heat. His young face already showed marks of a difficult life, but his eyes shone with a determination that Manny immediately recognized. It was the same look he himself had when fighting to survive on the streets of his hometown. The boy, who Manny would later discover was named Arjun Bayani, timidly approached the window of a nearby car, offering his water bottles with a hopeful smile. The driver of the vehicle didn't even bother to look at the small vendor, closing the electric window with a gesture of disdain that made the boxer's heart tighten in his chest. Arjun showed no discouragement, just took a deep breath and moved on to the next car, carrying the weight of responsibility that seemed too great for his fragile shoulders. Observing that scene, Manny felt an immediate connection with the boy. Memories of his own childhood flooded his mind like an uncontrollable torrent. The days when he sold cigarettes on the streets of General Santos to help his family, the nights sleeping hungry, the dreams that seemed impossible to achieve. The green light came on, but the boxer couldn't take his eyes off little Arjun, who was now moving away, apparently disappointed with the few sales he had made that suffocating afternoon. Without thinking twice, Manny maneuvered his car to the shoulder, ignoring the impatient honks from drivers behind him. Something about that boy had deeply touched his soul, awakening a feeling that went beyond simple compassion. It was as if he were looking at a reflection of his own past, a younger version of himself fighting against adversity with the same silent determination that had taken him to the top of the boxing world. As he got out of the vehicle, Manny felt the intense heat hit his face like an invisible opponent. The hot asphalt seemed to melt under his feet as he walked toward the young vendor, who was now trying to offer his merchandise to hurried pedestrians on the sidewalk. The boy was so focused on his work that he didn't notice the boxing legend approaching, continuing to announce his water bottles in a voice that alternated between fatigue and hope. Arjun only noticed Manny's presence when his shadow cast over him, providing a brief relief from the relentless sun. The boy looked up, initially with apprehension, but his expression quickly transformed into a mixture of surprise and admiration upon recognizing the famous face of the world champion. His small calloused hands nervously gripped the strap of the styrofoam cooler as he tried to process the fact that his idol was standing right in front of him, looking directly at him with a gentle smile. Without words, only with respectful gestures, typical of Filipino culture, Manny indicated that he wanted to buy all the remaining water bottles. Arjun's eyes widened in disbelief, moving from the boxer's face to the box still almost full of bottles. The boy hesitated for a moment, as if suspecting that this might be some kind of cruel joke, but the sincerity in Pacquiao's gaze quickly dispelled any doubt. With hands trembling with emotion, Arjun began to count his bottles, probably mentally, calculating how much he would receive for the unexpected sale. Manny watched attentively, noticing the boy's injured fingers, dirty nails, sunburned skin, and especially the dignity with which he carried out his work. It was a mirror of his own journey, a living reminder that every champion started as an anonymous fighter against life's circumstances. While Arjun organized the bottles to hand them over, Manny gently asked about his life. The boy, still nervous about his idol's presence, explained that he lived in the Tondo district, one of the poorest areas of Manila, with his mother Ligaya and 2 younger sisters, Mayumi and Dalisay. His father, Bayani, had died 2 years earlier from a respiratory disease, leaving the family in a difficult situation. Since then, Arjun had dropped out of school to help support the household, selling water in the streets during the day and collecting recyclable materials at night. The story deeply touched Manny's heart, who saw in that boy the same resilience that had shaped his own character. It wasn't just the similarity with his past that moved him, but the courage of that boy in facing such great responsibilities at such a tender age. The world champion, who had faced the most fearsome opponents in the ring, felt humble before the silent battle that Arjun fought daily without gloves, without referees, and without the possibility of throwing in the towel. In a gesture that surprised the boy, Manny not only paid a value much higher than the price for the water bottles, but also invited Arjun to have lunch at a nearby restaurant. The boy, with eyes brimming with emotion, looked at the money in his hands as if it were something unreal. It was more than he could earn in an entire week of hard work under the sun. For a moment, he was paralyzed, not knowing how to react to that unexpected generosity. Noticing the boy's hesitation, Manny explained that he would like to know more about his story and perhaps help him in some way. He mentioned how he had also sold items on the streets as a child and how he understood the difficulties he faced. Arjun, still stunned by the situation, timidly agreed, although he seemed worried about abandoning his sales spot so early in the four day. His sense of responsibility, even in the face of that unique opportunity, said a lot about his character. The chosen restaurant was simple but clean and welcoming, a place where Arjun wouldn't feel out of place. During the meal, Manny observed how the boy ate eagerly, probably his first complete meal in a long time, but maintaining impeccable table manners. Between forkfuls, Arjun revealed more details about his life, his dream of returning to school one day, his admiration for boxing, and how he watched Pacquiao's fights whenever he could on store or bar televisions. He talked about how his mother worked as a laundress, but the little she earned barely covered the rent for the small shack where they lived. While attentively listening to Arjun's story, Manny was making a silent decision. The coincidences between their life stories were too great to be ignored, and the boxer saw in that casual encounter something greater, perhaps an opportunity to give back all the blessings he had received throughout his career. Without revealing his intentions, he asked where the boy lived exactly and if he could meet his family. Arjun, initially surprised by the request, ended up agreeing, although he seemed embarrassed by the idea of taking a celebrity like Pacquiao to his humble home in Tondo. The trip to the poor neighborhood was silent, with Arjun occasionally pointing out landmarks or telling small stories about the region. Manny drove carefully through the narrow and poorly paved streets, observing the precarious conditions around him. Barefoot children played amid garbage, elderly people sat on makeshift doorsteps, and the air carried a mix of food smells, humidity, and despair. It was a familiar scenario for the boxer, who had never forgotten the difficulties of his own childhood. Upon arriving at the Bayani family's residence, Manny was greeted with the expected shock and disbelief. Ligaya, Arjun's mother, a woman with a tired appearance but intact dignity, couldn't believe that the famous Manny Pacquiao was in her humble home. Arjun's younger sisters, 7-year-old Mayumi and 5-year-old Dalisay, hid shyly behind their mother, peering curiously at the illustrious visitor. The house was small, with walls of various materials and a zinc roof, but clean and organized, reflecting that family's effort to maintain dignity even in the most adverse circumstances. Seated in a simple chair offered by Ligaya, Manny explained how he had met Arjun and been impressed by his determination and responsibility. The mother, with tears in her eyes, shared how difficult it was to see her son abandon his studies to work, but there was no alternative after the father's death. She told about the dreams that Bayani, the deceased father, had for his children, and how he always believed that Arjun would be the first in the family to complete his studies. The boy listened to everything in silence, eyes fixed on the dirt floor, as if he carried the weight of the world on his small shoulders. It was at this moment that Manny revealed his intentions. With the same determination with which he faced his opponents in the ring, he announced that he wanted to help Arjun return to school, offering to cover all educational expenses and also provide monthly financial assistance so that the family could maintain itself without depending on the boy's work. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by Ligaya's contained sobs and Arjun's incredulous sigh. Little Mayumi and Dalisay, without fully understanding what was happening, smiled upon seeing their mother and brother emotional. In the days that followed, the life of the Bayani family was completely transformed. Manny not only fulfilled his promise, but went beyond. Through his foundation, he arranged for the family's transfer to a safe and comfortable house in a better neighborhood, secured places in good schools for all three children, and helped Ligaya get a decent job in one of his businessman friends' companies. News of the boxer's generosity soon spread throughout the Filipino community, but Manny made a point of keeping the details private, protecting the family's dignity. Arjun, now free from the weight of being the family provider, flourished in school. His teachers were impressed with his intelligence and dedication, reporting to Manny that the boy demonstrated a special talent for mathematics and sciences. During regular visits to the family, the boxer always brought books to encourage study. Han spent hours talking with Arjun about his dreams and plans for the future. What had begun as an impulsive act of charity was transforming into genuine mentorship, with Manny seeing in the boy a potential that reminded him of his own. During one of these visits, 6 months after the initial encounter, Manny noticed that Arjun had developed a particular interest in boxing. The boy had improvised a small training space in the backyard of the new house, using sandbags and old tires as equipment. Observing his raw but promising technique, Pacquiao offered to take him to his gym. It was the beginning of a new phase in the relationship between the two, with Arjun now dividing his time between studies, which remained a priority, and training under the supervision of the world champion himself. Years passed, and the seed, planted on that hot day on the streets of Manila, blossomed in unexpected ways. Arjun, now a 17-year-old young man, had become not only an exemplary student with a guaranteed university scholarship, but also a promising amateur boxer. His sisters, equally benefited by Manny's generosity, stood out in their own fields, Mayumi in the arts and Dalisay in sports. Ligaya, with financial and emotional stability, had become a community activist, helping other families in vulnerable situations. For Manny Pacquiao, that family represented much more than a simple act of charity. It was a constant reminder of his own origins, of the importance of never forgetting the path traveled. In each of Arjun's achievements, he saw his own journey reflected, and this gave him a different kind of satisfaction, deeper than any victory in the rings. The boy who sold water in the streets had become like a son to him, an extension of his legacy that went far beyond boxing titles. Arjun's transformation did not go unnoticed in the Filipino community. His story, although kept away from the media, spotlight out of respect for his privacy, became an urban legend in Manila. The water-selling boy who found a path to a better life thanks to the generous heart of a champion. In the streets of Tondo, his former neighborhood, his name was mentioned with pride, a symbol of hope for other children who faced similar circumstances. In his senior year of high school, Arjun surprised everyone by announcing that he intended to study medicine. Inspired by his father's premature death due to lack of adequate medical care, he dreamed of returning to underprivileged communities as a doctor. Manny, moved by the young man's decision, promised to support him fully on this journey, even knowing it would mean postponing a possible professional career in boxing. It was a choice that demonstrated Arjun's true character, the same compassion and sense of responsibility that had caught Pacquiao's attention in that first encounter. During the graduation ceremony, where Arjun was recognized as an honor student, Manny sat discreetly among the guests next to Ligaya. Watching the young man receive his diploma with contained tears in his eyes, the boxer felt a different emotion from any other he had experienced in the ring. It wasn't the adrenaline of victory or personal pride, but something deeper and more lasting, the certainty that he had contributed to changing not just one life, but the destiny of an entire family. That night, during the small celebration at the Bayani house, Manny finally revealed something he had kept secret for years. He announced that he had created an educational fund in Arjun's name, not only to guarantee his university studies, but also to help other children in vulnerable situations. The fund, he explained, would be partially administered by Arjun himself when he came of age, giving him the opportunity to extend to others the same hand that had once been extended to him. The news was received with emotion by the family. Ligaya, who over the years had developed an almost maternal relationship with Pacquiao, couldn't hold back her tears. Mayumi and Dalisay, now teenagers aware of the dimension of generosity that had transformed their lives, embraced the boxer with genuine gratitude. Arjun, for his part, remained silent for a long moment, absorbing the meaning of that gesture. When he finally spoke, it was to express not only gratitude, but a solemn commitment to honor that trust, transforming other lives just as his had been transformed. The years in medical school were challenging for Arjun. Between the long hours of study and exhausting shifts, he found time to visit underprivileged communities and offer basic healthcare, always accompanied by colleagues who shared his vision. The educational fund created by Manny was beginning to bear fruit, with dozens of children receiving scholarships and support to stay in school. Ligaya had become the main administrator of the project, bringing her personal experience to identify families who truly needed help. Manny, now away from the rings and dedicated to his political career, followed Arjun's steps with pride. Whenever his commitments allowed, he made a point of participating in the community actions organized by the young medical student. On these occasions, he observed with satisfaction how Arjun had developed a natural leadership, inspiring other young people with his story and example. It was like seeing a reflection of himself, not in boxing, but in the social impact he had always sought to have in his country. In his final year of college, Arjun faced his greatest challenge when a devastating typhoon hit a remote region of the Philippine archipelago. Without hesitation, he organized a team of volunteers and, with Manny's logistical support, established a field hospital in the most affected area. For weeks, he worked tirelessly, treating victims and coordinating the distribution of medical supplies. His dedication caught the attention of the national media, which finally discovered the story behind that promising young doctor. When journalists questioned Arjun about his motivation, he didn't hesitate to tell the complete story. The day when he was selling water on the streets and was noticed by Manny Pacquiao. With contained emotion, he recounted how that casual encounter had changed the course of his life and how he now tried to give back by helping others find their own path. The report, broadcast nationally, moved the entire country and brought light to the lesser-known facet of the famous boxer, his silent commitment to social transformation. Arjun's graduation from medical school was a significant event, not only for the Bayani family, but for an entire community that had followed his journey. Manny, invited to give a speech during the ceremony, surprised everyone by declining the honor, suggesting that Ligaya take his place. Arjun's mother, overcoming her natural shyness, moved the audience by speaking not only about her son, but about how a single act of kindness can trigger a wave of positive transformations that extends far beyond the imaginable. A decade had passed since that encounter on the streets of Manila. Arjun Bayani, now a respected doctor specializing in public health, had established several clinics in underprivileged communities throughout the country. His innovative approach, combining preventive medicine with educational and community development programs, had become a model studied internationally. Ligaya coordinated the family foundation, which had grown to include not only educational assistance, but also microcredit for small entrepreneurs and professional training programs. Mayumi, the middle sister, had become a recognized artist, using her talent to portray the reality of poor communities and draw attention to urgent social issues. Her exhibitions attracted not only art admirers, but also donors for the foundation's projects. Dalisay, the youngest, had followed in Manny's footsteps in sports, not in boxing, but in athletics, representing the Philippines in international competitions and using her platform to inspire young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. On a sunny morning, very similar to the one when their lives first crossed, Arjun received an unexpected phone call. It was Manny inviting him to meet at the same intersection where it all began. Intrigued, the doctor went to the arranged location, finding his mentor sitting on a simple bench, observing the movement of the city. For a few moments they remained in silence side by side, each lost in their own memories of that fateful day. It was Manny who finally broke the silence, revealing that he was about to announce his candidacy for the presidency of the Philippines. More than that, He wanted Arjun to take a fundamental role in his government platform, leading public health and social development initiatives. It was a proposal that reflected the absolute trust that the former boxer placed in the one who had once been just a boy selling water on the streets. Arjun, deeply moved, accepted the challenge without hesitation, seeing in it another opportunity to expand the positive impact he sought to have in his country. As they talked about plans and possibilities, a boy approached timidly, offering water, bottles. The déjà vu was too strong to be ignored. Arjun and Manny exchanged a knowing look before buying all the merchandise from the small vendor. Then, gently, they began to talk with him about his life and dreams. The wheel had come full circle, and now it was Arjun who could extend his hand to another young man as he had once been, continuing the cycle of transformation initiated by a simple act of kindness. As the sun set over Manila, casting a golden light over the city, Manny and Arjun walked side by side, accompanied by the young water vendor. They were no longer just a famous boxer and a street boy, nor an influential politician and a respected doctor. They were two men united by a shared history, by an unwavering belief in the transformative power of compassion, and by a commitment to build a better future for their country, one life at a time. And so the cycle of kindness initiated at that intersection years ago continued, expanding like ripples in a lake, touching more and more lives with its silent but powerful message. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.